you for joining us on this webinar, which is going to discuss why high net worth clients choose Guernsey. I've got an expert panel joining me today to talk through all the pertinent facts for those considering a relocation. Extremely topical at the moment with everything going on in the world. Global mobility continues to be the most pressing issue for high net worth clients. So delighted to be bringing you this panel on Guernsey. I'm going to be introducing each of our panelists shortly, or allowing them to introduce themselves. But just to say that the chat is open. This session welcomes conversation and questions direct from the audience. So if you do have any burning questions, do put them in the Q&A or the chat, and I'm looking out for them, and we'll bring them straight up to our panelists as we move through. But without further ado, I'd like to come to each of my panelists for a brief introduction, starting with, of course, Joe Stoddart from Locate Guernsey. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, David. So I'm Jo Stoddart, Director of Locate Guernsey. We're a government-funded agency offering free tailored guidance to individuals and businesses who are considering a move to the island. And we support people at every stage of the relocation journey and provide them with information across a wide range of topics. One of our key aims is to ensure that anyone exploring relocation is equipped to make a fully informed decision about whether Guernsey is the right fit for them. We see ourselves as the friendly face of government, and we're really well placed to connect clients with the most relevant experts, be they within the government or across the business community. Whenever specialist insight is needed, you can ask us and we can point you in the right direction.
Fantastic. Well, great to be talking today, Joe. Mark Savage from BDO. Welcome, Mark.
Hi. So I'm Mark Savage. I'm tax director here and sort of head of the private client team, tax team here in Guernsey. So a lot of my business basically is dealing with potential relocators to Guernsey, advising them on what that means and sort of helping them out when they get here with sort of navigating the tax affairs here in Guernsey and where they've left, basically.
Super. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Marquand, great to have you with us.
Yes, good afternoon to all listeners. I've born and lived in Guernsey most of my life, worked in residential property in our unique category of open market sales for 40 years and got to know the island, most of the houses that form that stock and a lot of contacts that have been quite useful to applicants. So hopefully I can help out this afternoon as well.
Super. Looking forward to getting into a bit of detail on the real estate front. And also, last but not least, Piers Dereham from Ogier. Welcome, Piers.
Hi there, thank you. I'm Piers. I work at Ogier Guernsey. I'm a property advocate in the property team, advising mainly on the sort of legal aspects of property transactions, trying to make them happen for clients. We do a mixture of work for people coming to the island and also people who are moving from one house to the other on the island.
Fantastic. So before we get into some of the detail of each of these segments, I'm going to come to our speakers just for a sort of high-level assessment of where they think we are in terms of trends. Joe, you've got your finger on the pulse. You talk to a lot of relocators. What is it that's driving demand for Guernsey, do you think, right now?
Well, many people initially look at Guernsey alongside other similar jurisdictions because of our lower tax regime. But what we consistently see is that they choose Guernsey for a much wider set of reasons. The island's always been known for being safe, secure, stable, and in a world where uncertainty is increasing, unfortunately, these qualities have become even more important to people considering relocation. In recent months, many of the prospective relocators we've talked to have spoken about rising crime levels in the UK, about gang culture in UK schools, and obviously with the instability linked to events going on in the Middle East, that's making a lot of people nervous. And so really, I would say that safety, security, and overall stability are right at the top of people's priority lists, and Guernsey can offer all of that alongside a genuinely high quality of life. And also people are looking for a balanced lifestyle, somewhere where they can enjoy their work, but they also have the time and space to enjoy family life. And Guernsey is a really fantastic place to raise children. I speak from personal experience, having moved here when my children were 3 and 10. And generally people don't spend as much time commuting because everything's so close. So it gives people back a lot of time in their day. And that's a huge and real benefit for anyone wanting to spend more time with their family or enjoying the island. And obviously we're English speaking, close proximity to the UK, and the island's very appealing and we're very well connected for travel. So it ticks an awful lot of boxes for those leaving the UK, as well as for expats wanting to return to Europe and be close to the UK, but not actually in the UK.
Fantastic. Well, look forward to digging into some more detail. Mark, the tax picture. Give us the essence on the tax picture in Guernsey.
Well, the tax picture here in Guernsey is relatively simple because we don't have capital taxes. So we don't have capital gains tax. We don't have an inheritance tax. We do have an income tax, but really that's about it. We do have property taxes and a few other bits and pieces, but by and large, it's a manageable income tax system rather than the swathes of taxes that you get in other jurisdictions, including the UK.
And I suppose you're often dovetailing with UK or advisors in more complex tax environments to make sure the move is a success.
Absolutely, and there's two pieces to the jigsaw. One, people sometimes think that becoming Guernsey tax resident means you're no longer tax resident wherever it is you've relocated from, and that's not always the case. So it is sometimes a bit more of a complex picture because what people need to do is be careful that they shake off the dust of wherever they've been living before, as well as becoming comfortably resident here in Guernsey for all the reasons Joe set out.
Thanks. And Ross, on the property front, where are you seeing clients coming from? We heard from Joe the attractive picture. There's lots of people coming from different scenarios. What are you seeing coming across the desk in your property firm?
Well, historically, it's been people probably from the home counties or the southern half of the country, but we've also had some strong inquiries and people that made it at home from Yorkshire and further north. But and I mean now that includes more widely in fact the Far East. There are people expats who are coming back, or a lot of people who've got aging relatives that they want to keep in close reach of in England, or as it with one applicant from who'd been resident in Hong Kong, his daughter was being educated in England and unfortunately got a hockey ball in the face, and it was very difficult to get back quickly from there. And having relocated to Guernsey finds that a sort of 1 hour hop is much more manageable in those sort of situations.
Fantastic. And Piers, is just tell us briefly, I mean, is buying property in Guernsey a straightforward process? We're going to dig in some of the detail in a bit, but what on a high level would you?
Yeah, I'd say at a high level, yes. In the vast majority of cases, yes, it is. And I think it's comparatively simpler than transactions in England, other jurisdictions. I mean, obviously there is detail to get through, and we do occasionally get some problem transactions, but on the vast majority of cases, no, it's a fairly, well, we hope a painless procedure, normally lasting between about sort of 4 to 6 weeks after an offer is accepted. Yeah, so yeah, I think in comparison to a lot of places, yes, it is quite a painless procedure.
So Mark, just digging into some of the details on the tax front, can you walk us through some of the key features? The top rate of tax. How does it work as well for people? Do you go and register with the local authorities? What's the tax filings like and things like that? Sketch us the general tax environment for a high net worth relocator.
Okay. Well, as I said, the main thing you need to worry about really is income tax, and yes, when you arrive, you need to register with the tax authorities. But that's a fairly painless process. It's a case of filling in a form, dropping it off, and they do the rest. But equally, once you're registered, you're then subject to 20% income tax on your worldwide income, which as a flat rate is, for those who are high net worths, is a very attractive rate in comparison to, for example, the UK. But actually, it's a little bit better than that because for the highest earners, we have various tax caps that apply that mean, for example, there is no one in Guernsey who pays more than £320,000 a year in tax, regardless of their income. But there's even better scenarios than that because, for example, for new arrivals who are buying houses in the open market, and I know Ross will be talking a little bit more about that, but if they pay £50,000 in document duty, their cap for the first 4 years is only £60,000. So again, regardless of income, they'll never be paying more than £60,000. And those are caps. So it's not, we want £60,000. It's if 20% of your income is less than that, that's what you pay. But if 20% of your income is above that, then that's what you pay.
There's a question in the Q&A for you, Mark, just asking, can you explain how social security payments and allowances and rates work for a relocator considering trying to understand the full picture. How does this work?
That's a very fair question, actually. The national insurance, or social insurance as we call it here, is the Cinderella tax, I guess. And we do have that. It works in pretty much a similar way to the UK, in the sense of if you're employed or self-employed, you pay social insurance on your earnings, but at generally lower rates than you would in the UK. So, for example, it's around your employees' social insurance is around 7%. It is capped. It's capped at a higher level than the UK, so it's closer to 200,000 than 70,000. But even so, the combined rate's still only about 27%. Where we do have a difference from the UK is if you are non-employed. So if you're neither employed nor self-employed, you are still subject to social insurance contributions. If you're under the state pension age, then that comes in at around 13% of your, but again, it's capped, but it comes in at around 13% of your income. Whereas if you're over state pension age, it's closer to 4%.
Okay, thank you. I hope that gets to your question. But just building on that, looking at corporate structures, so entrepreneurs come to Guernsey, they're going to run a business, employ people. So how do entrepreneurs kind of set themselves up to run businesses? Because I know that demographic is increasingly what you're looking at in terms of the relocation market.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one, and really it depends on how hands-on they are with the business that they are involved with. Quite often we'll get people who are, for example, passing on the business to the next generation already. So they'll come over, they'll retain their shares in the business, they'll still attend board meetings, perhaps once a month, perhaps once a quarter, but they won't be involved in the hands-on running of the business. Where they are more closely involved in the hands-on running of the business, there's two things to consider, because there's not just the personal position, but there's also the taxation of the company to consider. And that's where it gets a little bit more complicated. I would say everyone's circumstances are different, so you do need advice on the particular circumstance. But one really great thing for people arriving who have a business and arrive with the shares in the business is that any dividends that they take from pre-arrival profits in the first couple of years, so profits that were earned before they moved to Guernsey, if they then distribute them out while they're in Guernsey, they're not even subject to the 20% rate or the tax cap. They are actually tax exempt for those first 2 or 3 years. So that's another really great incentive for people who have these businesses to think about bringing them over. And also, if they're considering an exit as well, we have no capital gains tax. So that's another reason for people to relocate as they're considering transitioning out of the business. And we get quite a lot of people in that position.
And just throwing to Joe, I mean, Joe, are you seeing more active entrepreneurs? Kind of, we're talking about running a business in Guernsey. There's all the support is there, and there's a good environment to make sure those ventures succeed. Are you seeing a different demographic or a different profile of client deciding to come and live in Guernsey now?
Yeah, very much so, actually. We're seeing a lot of younger entrepreneurs because people are realizing that actually they want quality time with their families. And when you're living in a place like Guernsey, it's so much easier to achieve that. But also the business community works well. We have a really good coffee culture. People meet and introduce people to each other. It's very easy to meet the right people in the business community, the right people from government, etc., and just to open doors. So yeah, we are seeing a different demographic, and it's actually really exciting. And let's face it, the vast majority of entrepreneurs, they're never going to switch off. They might say they're going to retire, and 4 weeks later they'll be starting something else because they're bored. So it's fantastic. We see all kinds of things, and of course the island really benefits from this because we benefit from the expertise and experience of people who have done lots of other things which might not have happened before here. So it's all good stuff.
Thanks. And Mark, I mean, a key part from the tax side, as you said on the top, is breaking residents properly if they're coming from the UK or elsewhere. How do you help guide people to make sure that they do establish themselves properly in Guernsey and don't and avoid spending too much time elsewhere?
That's a very good question, and again, it's down to the individual because it depends what their needs are and their intentions of going back to the UK. We have people who relocate from the UK and they're brilliant. I don't particularly want to go back, but we've got other people clearly who have business interests still in the UK, and they're very concerned about how much time they can realistically spend in the UK without becoming tax resident. And there are a number of tests you can use. Each of them sets a number of days that you can spend in the UK without becoming tax resident. And in general, the more ties you have to the UK, work, family, accommodation, things like that, the less time you can spend in the UK without being resident. So we help people navigate that, help them understand how many ties they've got or need to have to the UK, and therefore how much time they can spend in the UK without becoming resident, and sort of allow a margin for that so that they can live the lifestyle they want, without sort of Guernsey being a prison that you can't get out of because you're risking spending too many days and things like that. It's really, really important that the lifestyle doesn't try and sort of wag the tax tail, if you like, or rather the other way around.
So you might have to give them a reality check and actually say, is this kind of day count in the UK actually feasible for your business, personal? If it's not feasible, need to think on the planning and make sure it's all right,
We've done that several times where people have been wanting to move over and actually have moved over, but haven't immediately broken UK tax residence because it wasn't feasible with their lifestyle choice. But we've helped them plan how they can manage a genuine exit from the UK tax net across a period of 1 or 2 years as their lifestyle becomes more and more embedded in Guernsey.
And with non-dom rules changing in the UK, have you seen more interest or inquiries from non-doms looking for something different but still close into the UK?
A little bit, yes. I mean, I don't. It's very difficult to pin it down to one single thing. I mean, the non-dom rule changes have affected the population of UK resident non-doms, but a lot of them are resident in the UK for a reason and don't want to change that. But equally, it's made other people look at their whole lifestyle and, is this where I want to be? And if it's not where I want to be permanently, what are my options? And as Joe says, we end up being compared to other jurisdictions in those sort of scenarios, and sometimes we'll come out on top because people aren't fully committed to the UK but want to stay close.
Okay, Joe, do you have a perspective on non-doms? Are non-doms sort of making your phone ring a little bit more than they perhaps did in the past?
Yes, they are actually, because the beauty of non-doms is that they don't have to worry about having a UK or Irish passport. They can actually, having had residency already in the UK, then it's really easy for them to be able to come to Guernsey. So we've actually had quite a few people, and it's nice because they're talking to their friends and we're seeing more.
Fascinating, interesting. Final question for you, Mark. What's the timeline for planning? Are there key dates in the year? How long or how much time or little do people need to make a proper relocation?
I think as soon as they're thinking seriously about it, and particularly at the point where they're committing to Guernsey as the place to go, is a time to start talking. For some people, there'll be very little to do at that point, and they can more or less wait until they've got here. But for others, there's quite a bit of planning to do, particularly those who are transitioning out of businesses I've already mentioned. They've got to transition out of particular lifestyle choices. Obviously, the 5th of April, the end of the UK tax year, is a key date for UK residents. But equally, there's split year rules that can treat people as leaving the UK partway through a tax year, which may or may not apply to different individuals. So again, having those conversations early, because if you turn around and say, well, I left the UK on the 1st of September, for tax purposes, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. And it's having those conversations early so people understand what they're doing and understand the effects of any kind of lifestyle reorganisations, business reorganisations that they need to undertake, and the timing of that. And talking early helps with that planning, because if there is a number of steps you need to take, then obviously the longer time you give it, then the better.
Fantastic. Thank you for setting that out so clearly. So Ross, just to bring you in, so the Guernsey open market system, people might have heard of it, but what can you explain a little bit more about what that is?
Certainly, yes. Well, I suppose it was originally to try and avoid some of the problems seen in Cornwall and South Wales, where there would be people buying property there and to the detriment of the local community who are no longer able to afford being there. So it was decided that if we provided a register of specific properties, a pool of properties that are known and referred to this afternoon then as the open market housing stock. It would, to some extent, it would maintain a stock of affordable housing for the local community, and this has actually proven to be a tremendously successful way to do that. And it has created this slight premium associated with the open market stock, but you can't lose sight of the fact that in effect that is a ticket to residency here, because in all other ways entry is very simple. It's in no ways intrusive. People buy their house and they're all sorted, and but there is just that consideration that the pricing is slightly greater than what the local community would be paying for what we otherwise know as the local market housing stock.
And what kind of properties are on the open market? Is there a variation in styles, apartment, farmhouses? Perhaps sketch us out what you see as the kind of stock people will be choosing from in the high net worth space.
Well, I think it reflects what people will be expect and be familiar with, perhaps with the exception of coastal properties if you don't live by a I mean, we've obviously got some sea views on those locations, but I suppose one of the bigger changes in recent years was the sort of evolution of purpose-built apartments in Guernsey. Ever since the law was introduced to sell flying freeholds about 35 years ago, it produced a stock of purpose-built modern housing apartments, and for a long time they weren't included in the open market housing stock. But there was quite a clever mechanism that our housing authority introduced, which enabled a transition of inscriptions from some of the anomalies that existed on the stock into some of these modern apartments. And so now the wider housing stock includes apartments, it includes the traditional sort of period houses, which are largely around the town centre of St Peter Port, one perhaps slight variation, people in London are very familiar with the extensive Georgian housing stock. We tend to have more Victorian housing, period houses that were built during a sort of economic boom in that period for us. We've also got a wide range of modern housing that was built in the sort of 60s, and the traditional stone farmhouses and country houses that are considerably larger and provide some of the sort of super homes. But the open market system was to some degree kicked off by a sort of exclusive enclave that was built on a former military fort, and was referred to as Fort George, and that was laid over specifically for open market housing. And so and that is in a commanding position above the town centre, looking out many of those homes with cliff top views, and that provides a certain type of, well, quite convenient, quite often considered lock up and leave property that people can use and utilise, and perhaps if they're travelling and away other parts of the world, find quite easy to own and live in.
Thanks. And Joe, what's your perspective on the relocators that you come and maybe tour around or look at property together? Are they pleased with what they find? Do they what kind of, is there any kind of trends as to the style of property that they enjoy living in?
Quite a few are looking for apartments, and I think if we had a few more open market apartments, that would probably be helpful. But some of them want a townhouse. They want to live in St Peter Port. Some of them want to live in the depths of the countryside. Lots of people obviously want a sea view. I will say that we do get comments about sometimes the property stock being a bit tired, because I think some of the houses, people have moved to the island and they've been here for maybe 20 or 30 years. And I think when you move into a property, often you do work first off, and then you don't bother for a long time to come. But so sometimes we do get those comments, but a lot of people will come and will do renovations, and they might knock down and rebuild. It's surprising the number of people that actually buy an open market property and actually knock it down and start again. And because it's in the right location, they just want something completely different. So yeah, varies from people to people. But I often say to people, be prepared to compromise. Think what are the most important things that you're looking for, and you might have to compromise. But actually, it never ceases to amaze me the number of people who say, oh, I found exactly what I was looking for, which is great.
Great. And Ross, I mean, what sort of level of investment are we talking about? How does the property market, what are the key price points?
Well, I suppose it's helpful perhaps to think in terms of London prices. I mean, we're not quite in comparison with Switzerland or anything, but you know, there are homes to be bought below £1 million. You know, there have been sales of, you know, 700 and something, 800, 900. I mean, in fact, probably a popular price range has become sort of 1.5 million to 2 million, considering we have this tax cap that was Mark referred to earlier, which providing people make a contribution of £50,000 for that purpose, that it's considered, you know, a qualifying factor if your stamp duty amounts to that much, which I think it would do at about 1.42 million, something of that nature. So there are certain people who have that in mind, who may wish to find something that's slightly higher value, but then the price range, you know, will escalate up to 5 million. Could be houses that have a wider range of amenities, whether that's swimming pools, snooker rooms, or, you know, the other sort of tennis court. So there's a pretty comprehensive range. And in fact, in terms of the sales, we've seen them, you know, going up to beyond £10 million for some quite fabulous estates. You know, there are less of them, but they are on the island. They do exist and they are available.
Thank you. There's a question in the Q&A just asking, on the renovation side, if people are renovating, what's the availability of builders, lead times, and obviously how long's a piece of string? But I mean, in general, if people are coming in and, as Joe says, they want to, you know, do some substantial renovations, I presume that can all be like anywhere.
Yes.
There's difficulties with those
Indeed.
kind of projects. But how do you see it?
We've suffered some similar trends since Brexit, probably some similar trends to that of the UK, and a lot of our sort of traditional labour resource from and Portugal and other sort of return back to where they come from. But we've now had things revised, and some of the main contractors are resourcing labour from wider afield. From Kenya and other parts of the world, and that is helping to provide a labour resource which they are calling on. So I have to say that the costs have escalated in recent years. We haven't been immune from the effects of inflation, and that has also impacted on building materials. And in fact, it's often said that certain products like ready mix, which is provided from one source only, is significantly higher. But having completed, you know, your dream home and restored somewhere, then the premium associated with that property, some of those costs are reflected in the higher value of the property you then own. So it requires some careful thinking, some careful planning, good advice, and consultation with professional advisors, surveyors, engineers, and ultimately, I suppose, estate agents, really.
Joe, I'm expecting you can help people in this regard as well.
Yes, actually, one thing I just wanted to add was that we've seen a surprising number of people who, if they have an existing relationship with a builder in the UK or wherever they're coming from, they can actually bring those teams of people over to do the work. It requires some, there's some rules and regulations in terms of where they can stay, etc. But if you're redeveloping a property and your builders can actually stay in it for a few weeks while they do some work, that happens quite a lot. Because particularly if you're someone who has done quite a few home renovations, you might have have a trusted team of people who know how, what you like and how you like it to be done. So we do see that happening quite a lot. We actually had one family that came over and brought their builders from Australia. I'm not quite sure why they brought them from Australia, but I think it was this long-standing relationship. So mostly they'd bring them from the UK. So
and
so it can happen.
coming from, that's totally unique in a sense, because if people were relocating almost anywhere else, they wouldn't be able to put a trades team they're familiar with on site to do the work, would they? So I can imagine that's a real saver.
Yeah.
There was, if I could add, I was at Chamber of Commerce lunch yesterday, and there was a delegation from Somalo, and they were talking with our civil servants about improving the sort of availability of a whole range of products, everything from food and for restaurants and building materials and things that might become more readily available and provide a wider range of products for us more directly, because in fact there are some often quite heavy materials that get transported from Europe to England and then to Guernsey, which it might represent sort of a slightly more inefficient way of dealing with things, and that's all being examined right at the very moment.
So for those looking at doing their research on the type of properties available and making it a move more tangible, what do you recommend to people? Do you doing remote visits, people coming for a bit of time, getting on the ground and seeing properties and things like that? What's your advice to those starting their research?
Well, I mean, I think obviously most people now are using the internet websites, and I mean, in years gone by, I used to meet people at the airport, and we'd spend several days driving around from every single house, and you'd have to visit places to learn more about them. But of course now, the digital photography and all the everything that's available online provides quite a considerable insight before you arrive here. But if somebody is planning a visit, I would always advocate arranging a tour with an agent for a sort of logical route, particularly if it's a short trip. You want to make the best of your time, and sequential timing, and possibly even spot lunch on the way. I mean, our lifestyle reflects an altogether more relaxed existence, and hopefully the whole process can be pleasure. But as part of that tour, we're routinely providing information about schools, marinas, sports clubs, memberships, and it's a great opportunity for people to treat the agent as a resource. I mean, if somebody is considering that sort of trip, I would certainly also advocate bringing along. I mean, they'd probably need some of this for their air travel, but if they bring a passport, utility bill, or a driving license, so that they can provide the sort of necessary sort of due diligence, particularly if it's a second visit, or they're expecting that they might decide to put an offer in on something, and the whole thing could take on a life of its own quite suddenly.
Thank you, Mark. I've got a tax question from you in the Q&A about SIPs and pension income. So, client has a SIP with Fidelity. How would it be treated for income tax and IHT if they became Guernsey resident? Could I cash it in the early years of residency and use the tax cap of 60k max? Just generally, or specifically in that scenario, but how are pensions treated?
So pensions normally are treated, once you've established Guernsey residence and broken UK residence, it's normally possible to draw from a pension subject to any restrictions imposed by the pension rules, sort of tax-free in the UK, and then they're normally taxed as income here in Guernsey. There are some anti-avoidance rules that may stop you taking huge lump sums all at once, because at that point, the tax authorities may consider that's not a pension because it's a lump sum. But when you take it as a series of payments, then normally that would just be subject to 20% and all the tax caps. So that's generally the question. Where you get into specifics about particular pensions, then I mean that is something we can help with. You also have to be careful about things. It's not as simple as I'll move to Guernsey, I'll live there for a couple of years, cash in my pension, move back. Because again, there's UK anti-avoidance rules that will catch you and tax you on your return. So if you're making a permanent move, then yes, it can be a relatively efficient way of extracting pension income relative to drawing that pension income in the UK, because you're losing less effectively in income tax. But it very much facts and circumstances.
Okay, thank you. And Piers, to bring you in on the property transaction, we've heard from Ross the range of property stock available, but perhaps talk us through, what does a property transaction look like in Guernsey? Does it, if someone's familiar with the UK kind of conveyancing process, are they going to find something different or similar, or perhaps you could sketch it out for us?
No, I'd say it's very similar in a very broad sense, yes. So, I mean, we're less, I mean, Ross is probably more of a gatekeeper than we are, but we do chat to people before they even find a property. They can come and chat to us, ask us what's involved. We'll give them advice on costs and document duty and general things to think about. Often people come to us once they found a property, they put an offer in, and that offer's been accepted, and then their instruction then is for us to get on and complete the transaction for them. I mean, broadly speaking, it's similar to the UK. We'll check that that they've got their finance in place. We'll check they're having a survey done and point them in the right direction if they haven't. And then we'll get on with the legal side, which is to carry out some research for them on the sort of legal issues that people are probably familiar with their other properties, such as boundaries and rights over other properties, any restrictive covenants that might stop them doing what they expect to do at the property, planning issues, checking their open market inscription is in order, there's no problem with the open market status of the property. And we'll then write them a report. And if they're happy with everything, they're happy with the legal side, they've got their finance in place, they're happy with their survey, and then at that stage they'll sign a contract, because there's some conditions of sale, which then make the whole transaction legally binding. They'll put down normally a 10% deposit, and we'll set a completion date. And on completion, we will handle the completion money, and we'll arrange for the clients to go to. Well, I mean, they don't sign conveyances here. Then there's an institution called the Conveyancing Court. It's actually part of the Royal Court of Guernsey, where the clients actually tip up to court, and they give their consent to the transaction. So the vendors and the purchasers turn up and give their consent, or they can do it by power of attorney if they don't actually want to be in Guernsey on the day.
Are high net worth relocators often buying cash, or is the more local mortgage market a feature, or what do you see in terms of the transaction you're doing with your typical relocator out of the UK on the financing?
Well, I think a lot of relocators, yes, would pay cash. But that's not I mean, not always the case. Sometimes they have property to sell and they need the sale proceeds from that property to afford their purchase. So we have to link the transaction in the same way as for a sort of slightly lower value transaction. And sometimes they borrow. Yeah, sometimes a bank is involved, or a lender, and a lender can secure their loan on a property in the same way as they can in the UK.
We were talking about the renovation, a large-scale renovation projects, perhaps, of properties that relocators are looking at. I mean, what are some of the things from the legal side that people think about? Is that the planning environment I mean, these things are always complicated, and that's why you get advice. But perhaps give us a little sense of some of the issues you see or solutions you can help clients with on some of these bigger projects where they're looking at renovations.
Well, I mean, we'll help clients, with the relationship with our builder and with contracts and that type of thing. Lending. I mean, if they're borrowing money, some lenders will lend on a project, although lending is less available than it has been in the past on construction projects. On planning, yes, I mean we can help them with our planning. I mean often they'll I'd say the primary person to help them with the planning side of things is their architect or their surveyor, because I mean the architects and surveyors have a sort of direct relationship with the planning authorities, whereas we generally normally get involved if there's only there's a serious problem or a dispute or an appeal that we have to do for clients.
And are people buying in personal names? They're using structures. Like, what's the trend on relocators and not off the shelf planning, but what do you see in practice happening?
Oh, a mixture. I think in general, I think possibly some people owning properties in their personal names more than they have in the past. So they might have a very simple structure where they just own the property in their personal name. But yeah, no, but we see other. I mean, sometimes the property will be vested in a trust. So the property will be owned by a company that's then put under the ownership of a trust that the client has set up.
There's no tax angle, is there, Mark, as such on the main residence that they might buy in Guernsey? Do you see?
No, I mean, going back a few years ago, there used to be some angles around that and around document duty, which is their equivalent to stamp duty, but they've long since gone. It doesn't really matter now whether people buy things in their own name or through a structure. So if people have an existing structure and that's where the money is, then they'll use that to make the purchase, as Piers was saying. But if you just want to buy a property in your own name, then just buy it in your own name. We've got no capital gains tax to consider on sale, and there's no document duty advantages these days. So yeah.
A couple of questions in the Q&A. I know we don't have any mortgage experts on the line here today, but just looking at a question on do mortgage rates align with those in the UK? What are current rates at 2 to 5 years? Is anyone willing to venture as to what, is it in parity or parallel with the UK? If people are borrowing to buy, is there anything anecdotal that you could suggest?
Sorry, you go, Mark. Sorry.
I was going to say, I think what we've seen with people is it very much depends again on the circumstances. If you're looking at something like a normal retail mortgage, if you like, it's a little bit similar to the UK, but there's probably a little bit less choice. So there's probably a slight premium in the rates, but not one that's huge. On the other hand, and most of the main UK lenders are here, by the way. But what we see with high net worths is where there's, for example, a bridging loan where someone's selling in the UK, buying in Guernsey, and they need someone to cover the difference. Some of the local banks here can offer some quite innovative solutions that will cover that gap. So it's not your standard 25-year mortgage, but it will cover that gap for those high net worths, because often they can be asset rich and cash poor, and there's some quite innovative solutions to that offered by some of the local banks and other lending institutions.
Another question in the Q&A just for you, Joe, just asking about entrepreneurs who've come to Guernsey with wealth generated, it says here, from alternative sources. So maybe that means crypto, things like that. Do you have a view as to, with customers, relocators coming into the island, source of wealth and check on business activity? What's your process?
We don't locate Guernsey because we don't actually handle any of the wealth. So it's up to the tax advisors, the estate agents, and the other institutions involved as to checking on source of wealth, etc. I mean, we do have people living here who have made their wealth through crypto. It's not an area that I know a huge amount about, but that it does happen. And if you have a UK or Irish passport, or you've got UK settled status, etc. Well, it doesn't really matter, I think, to a certain extent, what your source of wealth is, because you're not having to apply for a visa. So, but it's up to generally the service providers who handle the money who deal with that.
Okay, no, that's fair. And Mark, the final question in the Q&A for the moment is around UK pensions moving to Guernsey under QROPs. I mean, I imagine this is quite a question, an area you're asked about quite a bit. What's the general principles around moving the pension?
If you're moving to Guernsey, moving a UK pension into a Guernsey QROPs is, generally speaking, really easy. There are plenty of Guernsey pension providers who offer a QROPs product. And if you're a Guernsey resident, moving your funds into a Guernsey QROPS is relatively easy, well trodden, and it's okay with HMRC because you're in Guernsey and you've got a Guernsey pension. So why not? If you're trying to move a UK pension into a Guernsey QROPS and you're not moving to Guernsey, then that becomes a lot more problematical, and is I would assume it's probably not going to be worthwhile. There are some exceptions, but they're very rare.
So as part of the move, then, could be a really good bit of planning, particularly how things are changing in the UK with pensions. So as always, is just look at the specifics and the advice. And Piers, just to finish off with you on the property side, so what's the one thing that really surprises people? What do people get wrong, and where would you sort of say, if you remember anything, remember this?
No, I'd say there's nothing uniquely Guernsey about that. I mean, I can't think of any unique Guernsey surprises in the legal process in buying a property. So not really. I'd say just I sort of just to amuse people. I mean, when I first came to Guernsey, I was quite amused by the fact that we had a contracts court, a conveyancing court, where you complete transactions. You don't just sign the conveyance, in the advocate's office. I was surprised by that. But on the serious points, no, I can't think of a Guernsey aspect of our process that's really going to sort of trip a client up.
And if clients are well prepared, there's no reason that transactions can't move pretty swiftly, can they? Once they've identified the property, they've got, the financing sorted. There's nothing there's no natural impediments, is there, here? If they're really on it.
I'd say, I mean, like probably the same for Mark and Ross, but I mean, we've got quite complicated take-on procedures now, for anti-money laundering regulations. But it affects Guernsey, affects the whole world. I mean, the world that we know anyway. Yeah. And that can, it can add a week or so to transaction times, but that holds everybody up. That holds banks, estate agents, accountants up in the same way. But so that's been the main delay, I'd say, in our turnaround times. But yeah, I mean, I say an average time, a sort of fairly standard time from our first instruction to completion would be between 4 and 6 weeks. We can do them quicker than that. But I'd say that, I mean, if people allow, I just have a broad sense that it's probably 4 to 6 weeks in the absence of any serious problems.
Okay, thank you. And Joe, we're going to chat on some of the practical and lifestyle side, but there's a question first on the level of wealth that someone needs to move to Guernsey that's come on YouTube. So what is it when you talk to people about it? Where do you set the bar?
Well, this is actually one of the main beauties of being able to relocate to Guernsey, because actually, unlike some other places, there's no minimum wealth threshold, no minimum spend on a property, no minimum income. Basically, people can come and simply live here. Obviously, they have to have the means to support themselves without any recourse to any public funds. But actually, provided that they have enough to buy or rent a property on the open market, they can quite simply just come and live here. Anyone who's got effectively a British or Irish passport, right of abode in the UK settled or pre-settled status, can live indefinitely in an open market home. They can work if they wish to, they can set up a business, they can simply live here supported by their wealth or investment income, and they can come with their immediate family. Typically that's children or parents, and they can be part of the household. But the fact that we have no minimum wealth requirement, you don't have to earn X a year, you don't have to have Y in the bank, you don't have to do spend at least Z on a property, and that makes it incredibly straightforward actually, and people can hardly believe it sometimes because it is so simple and straightforward.
Great. I mean, we're heading into the last 10 minutes, so if people do want to put a question in the Q&A or the chat, do it now so I can bring back the panelists in. But Joe, just to come to you on a few other points that we haven't quite covered yet on schools, education is a major factor. What's the Guernsey offer in terms of families coming over looking to educate children?
Well, we've got actually an excellent education system, and actually our students consistently achieve strong public exam results compared with the UK, and many of them progress on to top UK universities. We've got 3 private colleges that provide education from age 2 right through to age 18. Elizabeth College, founded in 1563, it's the island's oldest school. It was once a boys' school, and it's now fully co-ed. And also in St Peterborough, there's the Ladies' College, founded in 1872, modelled on Cheltenham Ladies' College. It remains a girls' school, but like Elizabeth College, Ladies' College have also had a lot of significant renovation in recent years. And actually, Elizabeth College and Ladies' College partner together for sixth form, which gives students access to a wide range of subjects. There's also Blanchland College, a Catholic school set in amazing countryside in the centre of the island. And again, they take children from age 2 to 8, but we have a really strong state education sector, and children would typically attend their nearest primary school according to the catchment. We've got 11 primary schools, including dedicated provision for children with special needs. At secondary level, there are 3 high schools from age 11 to 16, plus another 2 schools specialising in additional needs. And for post-16 education, obviously there are the 3 private colleges, but students can also choose the academic route at the sixth form centre, or they can go on to pursue practical and vocational courses through the Guernsey Institute. So Guernsey really does have a broad and high quality education system with opportunities that suit every child, which is fantastic.
So there are options. There are school places available. If people are coming
Yes.
mid-year as well, they can. There's no
Yes.
disruption.
Yeah, no, it's great actually, and sometimes I remember talking to one of the head teachers. There was a Swiss family that were moving over, and their children didn't speak particularly good English, and some of the schools were a bit nervous about taking these children on. And the head teacher of one of the private colleges said to me, "Oh, you know what? I'm used to this in London. You know, someone might arrive on a Monday not speaking a word of English, and by Friday they've sort of, they can do the basics really." So yeah, it's very welcoming, very warm, and it works well.
Great. And then on healthcare, I mean, what
Yeah.
this is important, particularly for those in later life or in a more of a retirement phase. What kind of healthcare support is there on the island?
Yeah, we have excellent healthcare, and it provides high quality, accessible care right across the island. We've got 3 main GP partnerships which offer 9 surgeries in different locations. So appointments are always easy to secure, and most practices offer same-day consultations, which is something newcomers, particularly those from the UK, really appreciate. We don't have the NHS though, so GP visits are paid for directly by the user or through private insurance. But if you're referred by a GP, all secondary and specialist healthcare is free of charge. And our hospital on the island is the equivalent to a UK district general hospital. And DGHs, I'm told, would normally support between 250 and 500,000 patients. We've got 64,000. So, they get a jolly good service. But the hospital, all the care at the hospital is consultant-led. We don't have junior doctors. And so that means patients receive really experienced clinical oversight at every stage. So, it's really good.
Question for you in the Q&A, Joe, just asking, apart from the weather, does the panel have views on why relocating to Guernsey is better than the Isle of Man? So there you go. I'll tee you up on that one, Joe. Have you got any view?
You know what? It's a beautiful place. It's obviously the safety and security, etc. That's something that the Isle of Man has as well. But we're very close to London. We've got lots of great connectivity. We have 8 rotations a day to either Gatwick or London City. And the Isle of Man, I know that they really do struggle with connectivity. Not that I would want to diss another jurisdiction, but given that the questioner has asked about it, we also have British Airways are starting direct flights from Guernsey to Heathrow next month. We have 3 direct flights a week to Paris. We have
to the
all
continent
over
is a
the
major
UK.
differentiator, isn't it?
Yeah,
So the fact
yeah,
that you can take a ferry or flight into mainland
Yes.
Europe
Yes,
is quite
yeah,
a different proposition,
yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, I think the connectivity is great. And I think, we have really high quality establishments for sort of eating. We've got a fantastic restaurant scene over here in Guernsey. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful place. The weather is obviously better, but it's very vibrant. And I think a lot of people don't realise until they get here, Guernsey punches very much above its weight in so many ways. I think people really appreciate the dynamism of what's going on over here.
So, and just leading on from that, Joe, I mean, what's it actually like living in Guernsey? What makes a successful move? What of the people you've relocated or worked with, which ones have really worked,
I think people who are ready to be open and make friends, but I think living in Guernsey is, for me, I think it's a really special experience. I've from the UK, I lived in Paris for 17 years. I've lived in Jersey, I've lived in London, but actually Guernsey it's so friendly, it's so welcoming, and actually the quality of life is absolutely amazing. I mean, coming from London when we moved to the Channel Islands, just suddenly being able to go and see our children at sports day and things like that, because it was so close. You didn't have to take off half a day off work or whatever. But the quality of life is fantastic, the stability, but the friendly community and the pace of life. I think because everything is relatively small, you can do so much in a weekend and you can do so much after school. As a parent, I was almost run ragged taking my children to so many different after school activities, whereas when we lived in London, it was maybe 1 or 2 a week because of the distances involved. And somehow life here just feels calmer, but still very productive. And I think this lack of commute is you gain back hours of your week simply not having to do that. And so people generally enjoy a really fantastic work-life balance. In the summer, people will leave the office and go and join the kids on the beach for a barbecue. And that kind of thing is very special. We've got Herm, tiny island just across from Guernsey. It's 20, 25 minutes on a boat to Herm. People will go to Herm for dinner and come back again. And it's just a really, well, I'm obviously very biased, but I love it here. I certainly wouldn't leave.
Lovely. Well, we're coming to the end of our session. There is a question in the Q&A I'm just going to put to Mark, and then I'm going to come to each of our panelists for a closing word. But Mark, just there's a specific question here about if someone has a large UK ISA portfolio, moved to Guernsey, while you haven't got the specifics of the scenario, what in general do you think about when you have a client moving over with UK specific tax efficient structures?
Well, I think you have to look at the particular structure. I mean, the one thing I would say about an ISA is an ISA is a UK specific tax break. So effectively it would be treated as any other portfolio in Guernsey. So you don't get a tax exemption from it for it. But any capital gains inside the portfolio, for example, so if you've invested for growth, they're going to be tax-free in Guernsey in a way that they wouldn't be outside an ISA in the UK. But any income that is generated within that portfolio, yes, that would be taxed and it would be exempt in the UK. So that's ISAs are probably the one thing where you get a more beneficial tax treatment in the UK compared to Guernsey. But
as always,
that is an exception, and it is swings and roundabouts. And I've never met anyone yet, however large an ISA portfolio they got, who felt they'd be worse off in Guernsey than they would be in the UK when you look at the totality of their affairs.
And Joe, the final question here on this: can a retired teacher relocate to Guernsey and still be eligible to teach? So, or if people are not retired but are teaching, say in the UK, are their qualifications recognised in Guernsey? And what's the job environment like there?
Well, the qualifications are recognised in Guernsey, but they couldn't. They would have to have they'd have to be employed by the Education Committee, and that in order to live in Guernsey, they would have to live in an open market property, because unless they came to take up a specific role which came with an employment permit, then that would be it would be more tricky. And obviously, the open market is slightly more expensive. So.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you. Well, look, we've had so many questions there over this hour. It's been fantastic. I'm just going to come to each of my panel for a quick comment as a sort of final takeaway thought, and then we're going to play out with a little video that Locate Guernsey have prepared to give those still watching a flavour of the island. But Joe, just for you, closing thought, what should people do next if they've enjoyed tuning into this conversation?
Well, I think basically it's come over and have a look, because once somebody's made a decision to move to Guernsey, the focus turns very quickly to finding a property. And what I would say is that it's really important, A, to talk to a tax advisor so that you understand exactly where you're coming from and what you're going to be facing, but also talk to the estate agents, because a lot of properties are not openly advertised. There's a lot of confidential instructions on the market. So don't be dismayed if you don't see something that you like, or if you don't see many properties, because there are so many confidential instructions, and that's why it's really important to develop a great relationship with the estate agents, because they can then show you, once they know what you're looking for, and once they know that you're a genuine prospective buyer or renter, then they will show you the confidential instructions. But basically, living in Guernsey for me, it's all about balance. It's beautiful, it's a tranquil island life, and combined with professionalism and connectivity of an international finance centre, I think it's an amazing place to live.
Thank you. Ross, closing word from you. Any tip you'd leave people with?
Well, I mean, I'd just like to say that, I mean, we touched on some of the surrounding benefits, and the proximity to France is quite important. I think don't underestimate the historic and cultural links that we share, that we still enjoy, that we're surrounded with them on the island. Take a lot of pride in those sort of connections as well, and it has a lot of spin-off benefits. I mean, I can't remember a summer I haven't been down St Malo, in the walled city, alfresco dining, playing golf, sailing, you know, all that sort of thing is part of our culture. And in fact, just to finish, there's actually an organisation, Art for Guernsey, that's run by David Hummels, and he's done a tremendous job in receiving loaned art items that are on display, and sharing exchanges with schools, and promoting the education of art in the islands in conjunction with France. So, you know, we're definitely in contact with the continent as well.
Fantastic. Piers, a closing thought from you as we wrap up this hour on relocation.
Well, not a lot to add, except I think I mean, it's an attractive place to live, Guernsey. In addition, I think it really punches above its weight in terms of sort of cultural activities, sports. It's got a lot of very good sports teams, a lot of very good sports groups, very good orchestras if you're into music. A good art scene, a good eating out scene. So for an island of 64,000 people, I think Joe was saying, it really does punch above its weight.
Fantastic. And Mark, you've been peppered with questions, but is there a final thought that you've not been already thoroughly examined on this afternoon?
Not massively. I mean, the thing is, moving to Guernsey is, as Joe said earlier, for a whole range of reasons, and tax is another one. Actually, moving here is relatively simple. The difficulty is managing your exit from the UK or wherever you happen to be now. And I'll just echo everyone else. Come and have a look at the island, and
fantastic.
More people than not will say, yeah, I could live here.
A good note to end on. We're going to play out with the video. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to my panel. And do explore Guernsey and give it a visit and take a further look. Thanks for joining us.
We moved to Guernsey really because we wanted to do something different whilst we were still young enough to be able to.
For us, I think the move to Guernsey was mostly oriented around starting our own family. We really wanted to be somewhere safe, community-oriented.
We came here for the first few times and we saw some amazing scenery, amazing beaches, amazing countryside.
Just so beautiful and lovely. We decided to come here, didn't we?
We did.
Really, from the very first trip, absolutely fell in love with the place.
Exactly.
It was a real hidden gem that we just didn't know about.
It's just breathtakingly beautiful, isn't it? And it's less than an hour flight from the UK. We were just gobsmacked.
I mean, you've only got to look at it. It really is stunning. But the people are so friendly and so welcoming.
We didn't know anybody when we arrived here, but the community in Guernsey has made it incredibly easy to feel connected to a community that I think will be a huge part of our life forever.
I love being able in Guernsey to just finish work, 5 minutes walk down to the marina, jumping on the boat and just watching the sun go down. There's absolutely nothing better.
I do a whole lot of things that I never thought I would do, including swimming every day with friends.
It's the freedom, isn't it? I mean, look out here. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the coast here or in rural Guernsey. That freedom is apparent with you every step of the way.
The social life in St. Peter Port, the restaurants, the bars, it's so lively. It's a brilliant place. The people are so friendly.
And the quality of care as well is just fantastic.
The hospital was brilliant, weren't they?
Yes.
I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more positive experience throughout Holly's birth.
I mean, the healthcare in Guernsey is brilliant. I had the misfortune of having to go to A&E and I was seen within less than 5 minutes, which is just crazy compared to the UK.
I think looking back, I am most grateful to the people of Guernsey for letting me in such a warm and welcoming way.
My best advice if you're thinking of moving, regardless of if you're fed up of the rat race in England, contact Locate team straight away.
We found the relocation process to be really easy. because we were led through it step by step by Locate Guernsey.
They get to know you and what you're doing and your preferences. So if you've got kids, if you haven't, and then they will invite you to things that matter, that will help you be part of everything. For such a thing where it's free and there's no motive for them whatsoever other than they truly love the island and the people they're attracting to it, is incredible.
I feel so proud to show this little island off for what it's worth, and will continue to do so with aplomb.
It's just a really easy place to settle, make friends, and create a whole new life.
It's one of a kind, and life is so short and so precious that to be able to enjoy every minute of it is an absolute blessing.
I mean, it really is an incredible place. It's magical. Having a home in Guernsey is like a dream.
You just need to come and see it and make the decision, and you won't regret it.
Anybody you speak to is going to be incredibly open about why they live here, why they love being here, and I think you'd have a really good experience.
I have one regret, and that wasn't doing it 4 years ago when I had the chance then.
And for somebody that needs that reassurance, I never thought a place would do that as opposed to a person. And I think that's wonderful. Thank you, Guernsey.